Hello, everyone. Brian Neubert here from GoldandBlack.com. Bye weekend in football. No football game. Our normal guests, Tom and Dub, have the weekend off. God knows what they're doing. Alan Karpick, our normal host, was denied bail. So this weekend for our GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast, it is just me. So once again, this is a GoldandBlack.com Saturday solo cast because there's only one of us. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your support. As always, we appreciate it very much. Since it's just me and I'm the basketball guy, I figured I would just talk about basketball for a while. This past week was the official, as opposed to the unofficial, start of preseason practice. Obviously, Purdue and every other program of consequence in college basketball has been practicing on a limited basis all off season, going back to the end of last season and all through the summer. But the occasion this week on Wednesday was it's officially preseason practice, meaning they can practice 6 out of 7 days a week. The NCAA requires a day off, otherwise we'd be able to call it daily practice. It is not daily practice. It is regular practice. We're just calling it preseason practice. Can't call it official practice because everything in the summer was official as well. So I'm just going to kind of talk about some of the things from the off season leading up to where Purdue is right now. As you are well aware, Purdue figures to be one of the best teams in college basketball this season. They're going to land at number one in some preseason polls. That is going to put some attention on them, that is going to put some pressure on them, depending on how you view it, depending on how they view it, depending on how they process it. It is going to put Purdue back in that position where every game is somebody else's Super Bowl on their home floor. Purdue should be well conditioned for that by now. A lot of these guys dealt with it 2 years ago. It wasn't necessarily completely out of their system last year. I'm talking about opponents. You remember when Purdue went to Penn State and got boat raced in that annual Big Ten road opener December loss. They stormed the court again. So Purdue is, even when Purdue is not number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the country, their program has gotten to a point where it's still a big deal for people when they come into their arenas. So Purdue has to be ready to handle that. They have to be ready to be consistent. The thing that was so easy to marvel at a couple years ago when they went to the Final Four was just how consistent that team was, how professional they were, how thoroughly unimpressed they were with themselves after games, before games, whatever it might be. Just unbelievable, cold and calculating professionalism from that team. Just unwavering resolve in what they were trying to get done. And I think this team could really stand to mimic that approach to every single outing this season. They should be able to do it. Braden Smith's been through it. Fletcher Lawyer's been through it. Trey Kaufman-Wren's been through it. You got a lot of experience on this team. Experience should matter. Continuity should matter more. And Purdue's got more experience and more continuity, certainly more continuity than probably anybody in college basketball. Houston's up there too. I think you're probably looking at a season here where I know people like Duke, I know people like St. John's, but I think it's probably Purdue and Houston side-eyeing one another from afar, the way Purdue and UConn were side-eyeing one another from afar 2 years ago as the two best teams in the country, or certainly the two teams that seem to be on a collision course to meet for a title. And that's what happened with Purdue and UConn 2 years ago. Whether Purdue and Houston are on a collision course to meet again in the NCAA tournament this year, who knows? The one thing I'll caution everyone to keep in mind here is this stuff's really hard. It is really hard to go to the Final Four. It is really hard to win a national championship, and making those predictions before seasons is really, really kind of a fool's errand, because it is really hard. So much luck is involved. So much good fortune, injuries-wise, is required. And everything in college basketball might look completely different on March 1st than it does on October 1st. Nobody knows what to expect from a lot of these teams. The personnel is all so different. The one thing you can say with certainty about Purdue is they're probably the most known commodity. Houston can probably make this claim too because Kelvin Sampson has the same team every year, one way or another, which is why he's, in my mind, the best coach in college basketball, or one of the top 2 or 3 coaches in college basketball. But Purdue is the most known commodity of a team because you know what Braden Smith is, you know what Trey Kaufman is, you know what Fletcher Lawyer is, you know what your needs were coming out of last season, and you have a pretty good idea of what you got and how that relates to the needs you have in terms of completing your team around a great core, the best core in college basketball, the best senior class in college basketball. So expectations obviously will rightfully be through the roof for Purdue this season. And it's going to kind of be up to them to make their very best their standard. I don't know if that makes sense when I try to communicate that to people. It's what I said 2 years ago, is that Purdue's standard isn't the Big Ten. Purdue's standard isn't Michigan State, or it isn't Indiana, or any of the artificial barometers that maybe you held yourself up against, or people on the outside held Purdue up against in years past. Purdue's standard has to be its very best. It's that Matthew McConaughey Academy Award speech a few years ago where he talks about his idol being himself in the future. Purdue's idol needs to be the very, very best version of itself. That means attention to detail. That means personal consistency, basketball consistency, personal improvement, great chemistry, being great teammates, all that stuff. Because if this team with these parts operates at its highest level every single game, you're looking at an unbelievably successful season, a special season, a chance to do things that you did 2 years ago and maybe then some. Again, talked about this stuff in the preseason, is kind of what it is. It's the nature of college basketball, but it is really difficult to foresee things in the future. All you can do is talk about what you see right in front of you in the moment. That's what I'm trying to do here. But the team I see in front of me right now is really, really good. Really good. These were, I get to go to, or I am fortunate enough to cover a program that has nothing to hide, transparent beyond transparency, unlike many of the programs in the country, most of the programs in the country, I should say. So I tend to get a pretty unfiltered view of things, and the practices I saw this summer were the best I've ever seen. Now, I can't sit here and say I was watching practices back 10 years ago in the context of, are these the best practices I've ever seen? How did this team's practices compare to that team's practices? I can't claim to remember the practices from 3 summers ago like it was yesterday, but the practices I saw this summer were the most competitive I've seen, and probably the sharpest I've ever seen, because you have so many guys who have played so much together. And when I say these practices have been really sharp, keep in mind, you've got Oscar Clough in his first year in the program. Liam Murphy wasn't practicing this summer, but he's new. Omer Mayer wasn't around for most of the summer. He's new. Daniel Jacobson was out virtually all last season. I'm still calling him a freshman because he's got a freshman career's worth of experience. So the fact these practices were so well oiled, for lack of a better term, I don't know about that one, was really something to kind of take note of. Now, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman know one another well. CJ Cox, Jakari Harris have a ton of experience with those guys as well. So it doesn't surprise you with the experienced guys that these guys are all on the same wavelength, all on the same page. And this is a pretty low-maintenance team in that regard. But when you consider the fact that they are breaking in some new guys, Jack Benner is another one, even though he was in the program last year as a redshirt, the fact that they are kind of blending old and new, and these practices were that sharp, really kind of says something about not only the assets Purdue has, but the savvy, the skill level, the adaptability that this whole group has. I think, truth be told, I know people say this every year because when they look at names on a list, they convince themselves that names are players. even if that name hasn't established itself as a player yet. Depth is only depth once depth has proven itself. Otherwise, it's just numbers. But I think when you look up and down this roster, I have to exempt Liam Murphy and Raleigh Burgess from this because they didn't practice all that much this summer. But outside of those two guys, and even taking into account true freshman Antoine West, Purdue's got 10 guys here who are all really good. And the competition for positions and for minutes is going to be really fierce. And this is going to be a team, inevitably, where every time you hear the word sacrifice, you can drink. Responsibly, please. I'm talking about like apple juice, of course, not something stronger than that. Something less acidic, maybe. But there are going to be really good players on this team, as there were 2 years ago, who aren't playing as many minutes as they are worthy of, as they have probably earned. And some of those guys are going to have to, really accept that. And I don't see any red flags in that regard. Matt Painter's done a great job, communicating with his players, establishing the right mentality among everyone in his program, top to bottom, from coaches to players, from the best player to the, I don't want to say worst player, but the guys who are at the end of the playing rotation versus the very top of the playing rotation. He does an excellent job managing personalities, managing expectations, making sure that no one's been lied to, no one's been misled, and thus, when something goes sideways, sometimes the player has no one to blame but themselves. That very rarely happens. This is a very low maintenance roster. Painter's done a good job evaluating personalities, evaluating good fits for his program. These have been very low maintenance teams Purdue's had. And I think that's going to be the same way this year, too. I think everybody's pretty well wired to do what's necessary here in terms of accepting their place in the world in the context of what Purdue wants to get done as a team. That was one of the hallmarks of the Final Four team a couple years ago. You had Mason Gillis coming off the bench when Mason Gillis was a guy who earned an opportunity to probably start every game and started no games. You just had a lot of guys who could have done a lot more. Fletcher Lawyer, his whole career, has been a guy who a lot of places would be getting 15 shots a game. And here at Purdue, when he's playing with Braden Smith and Zach-Edey and those guys, take up a lot of gravity. He's been better because of them, but he's not been that guy that gets 20 shots a game or 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 shots a game, in which opportunities he would probably average a lot more points and have a lot more name recognition around college basketball. I have been his only All Big Ten vote the last 2 years, I believe. And he's an All Big Ten caliber player. It's not been important to him to aggregate stats or accumulate stats. He's been all about winning, and that's kind of what defines Purdue. Traycoff Moran being a guy who came in as a guy who was offered by North Carolina out of high school, who was willing to redshirt, stayed here while Zach-Edey was here for 2 years, waited his turn, stuck it out, has worked really, really hard his whole career. These guys are, what Purdue's collective personality is built around. I think that filters down, to the Jakari Harrises and the CJ Coxes, great substance guys. And that then gets passed down to the new guys coming in. Oscar Clough, I think, is ideally tailored for this program. He's a blue-collar guy. He came up in basketball through Australia, Arizona, South Dakota, and Pullman, Washington. That's been his journey. So he probably feels like he lives in downtown Manhattan right now compared to some of the places he has been. So blue-collar humility, I don't think is going to be an issue with Oscar Clough, and I think you've got personalities here. Omer Mayer came to Purdue. Omer Mayer could be a star. Omer Mayer could be a star in the NBA or a draft pick in the NBA before he's a star in college, for all we know. He came to Purdue knowing Purdue has Braden Smith. So there's a certain measure of ego already checked at the door, or I should say, checked at customs in his case. Probably the same for Oscar Clough. So I think this team's got the personality to do what it wants to do this year. and it's got everything else. People might talk about like aggregate athleticism, but what good did that do Purdue last year? It really didn't. It doesn't show up on defense as much as it can when you don't play with energy. And I just think athleticism is less important than skill. Certainly at Purdue. I could be proven wrong. Maybe athleticism, when you get to the very last round of the NCAA tournament, gets the best of skill the way paper would rock. But skill can take you a long, long ways. And Purdue is loaded with skill. There have been a lot of great ones, but this is probably the best shooting team Purdue's had. And keep in mind how good they have been shooting three-pointers these last 5, 6, 7 years. Arguably the best shooting program in the country. Not arguably, clearly one of the best offensive programs in the country. Trey Kaufman-Morenz is as good a low post scorer as they've had, and they've had Zach-Edey, they've had Caleb Swanigan, they've had Isaac Haas, they've had all of these dudes who are, special front court players offensively. Trey Kaufman-Morenz right up there with them. A very different player. I think you're going to see his perimeter skill come out more this year. You're going to see his passing come out more this year, and you're going to see him vulture some of Braden Smith's assists, which I'll give Braden Smith the benefit of the doubt there that he'll be perfectly cool with that, especially in light of the fact he's chasing the NCAA's all-time record. But I think they are going to use Trey Kaufman-Morenz more as a passer. He's going to have more opportunities to accumulate assists. But more importantly, Purdue's going to have more opportunities for really high percentage scores at the rim. Purdue was not a great rim finishing team last year. Purdue last year in general was just not very good at the rim. Offensively, defensively, especially defensively. But I think this year, putting Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson next to Trey Kaufman-Morenz is going to allow Purdue. I'm really going off on a weird, granular tangent here, but I think putting true size next to Trey Kaufman-Morenz is going to create a lot of opportunities in like secondary actions off pick and roll. It's going to provide a lot of dump down opportunities, a lot of high-low opportunities, a lot of offensive rebounding opportunities, so on and so forth. I think you're going to see a lot more dunks from this team than you did last year's team. Dunks don't matter. They're the same 2 points as anything else, but I think you're just going to see a higher percentage 2-point field goal attempt on average from Purdue, in addition to being one of the best 3-point shooting teams in college basketball, if not the best. Purdue can outscore anybody. Offense is not going to be the issue here. There might be the best offensive team in college basketball. I know I'm throwing out a lot of absolutes here. That's a dangerous game before the season, but I'm looking at this on paper. I'm looking at this objectively. I'm looking at what I saw in practice all summer. I'm looking at these players' track records, and I'm telling you how I think this is. And I think I've got this right. They're going to be one of the best offensive teams in college basketball. Defensively, while they may be capable of outscoring people when necessary, I think they are going to be a markedly better defensive team for one reason and one reason alone: defensive rebounding. And all defensive rebounding comes with everything that ripples out across the basketball landscape from defensive rebounding now comes to the forefront, okay? Oscar Clough, albeit at a lower level at South Dakota State, the top defensive rebounder in college basketball last season. He now comes to a team for which defensive rebounding last season was the Achilles heel. What really bothers me about the term Achilles heel, you're going to have to bear with me here because this is for me. This is my one platform to rant about this. We say the Achilles heel, but when you write it, people use the possessive apostrophe after the S in Achilles, which would be meaning this heel belongs to Achilles. But when you say the Achilles heel, those things don't agree. You're making it the subject. Whereas before it was the proper name with the possessive context of his heel. So it's either Achilles heel possessive or the Achilles heel. So it can't be both, guys. So at some point in the writing community, we have to come together. We have to have an intervention, and we need to figure this the hell out because this has bothered me since I was young, and I'm not young anymore, and it still bothers me. So thank you for humoring me there, as I went off on a years in the making tirade about the term Achilles heel. I was talking about defensive rebounding. So that was Purdue's open wound last season. It was what they had to sell out to just overachieve in. It affected their offense. It certainly affected their defense. Second chance points given up this year should, I don't want to say dry up completely, but they should be much fewer and farther between, right? Um, Fast break opportunities off defensive rebounds. Huge deal for Purdue this year. Keep an eye. You got the best point guard in the country. You got a ton of shooters around him. In my opinion, not having those above the rim athletes now in Camden Heide, Miles Colvin, shave a couple of turnovers off Braden Smith's total this year, because I think that athleticism maybe clouded his judgment a time or two last year. He's a great player, but I do think he always looked for them, perhaps as a priority, to try to get that alley oop done. And sometimes maybe he didn't make the best decisions doing that. I'm thinking of a ball thrown right in front of me against Houston last year, where it just basically went into the first or second row of the crowd. Nitpicking a great player, yes, but I think not having those jumping jack guys running the wing maybe helps his judgment in those situations a little bit better. If you get in more fast break opportunities, which you will because of defensive rebounding, because you might block a shot or two a month this year as opposed to 0 last year with Daniel Jacobson, you're going to get more easy offense. Your rebounders, Oscar Clough, Daniel Jacobson on the offensive glass, not only are going to get you a couple of putbacks a game probably, but they're going to create all kinds of opportunities, all kinds of gaps for Trey Kaufman to get in there and hit the offensive glass. And I think your garbage points this year, between fast break, points off turnovers, second chance points, are going to go way up for Purdue, and they're going to go way down for the opponent. That in itself right there might be like spotting Purdue like a 6-0 lead to start games. That's just me speculating, but it is very educated speculation based on the complexion of this roster, the complexion of this team, and just how I think they're going to play, and what they can kind of look forward to this year. I don't see a vulnerability. I mean, Purdue's not perfect. But there's just no glaring deficiency on this team. The athleticism part of it I've talked about before. I don't think it's as big a deal as some people might. And I don't think Purdue is wholly unathletic necessarily. But I think that Purdue's got everything going for it. It's got depth. It just has to take care of the basketball. That is the biggest thing. I think Braden Smith and Omer Mayer, we still haven't gotten absolute clarity on that. I'm going to call him Omer Mayer until I am told with certainty otherwise. I think those guys have to do the best job they possibly can, being simple, taking care of the basketball, making basic, easy plays, because when Purdue just maximizes its opportunities, Purdue's offense is going to score a billion points. They're going to be really, really efficient in doing so. They're going to get enough garbage offense to where if you just don't give cheap scoring to the other opponent, your plus minus in those categories is going to be really heavily tilted in your favor. And I just think Purdue's got a lot going for it. I think from a depth perspective, I think Trey Kaufman can afford to foul now. I think Purdue can have an offensive destination player on the front line when Kaufman goes out. Things went sideways on them last year when he got in foul trouble, not just because he was a great player, but because they didn't really have somebody else they could throw the ball to. I think now with Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson, you can do some of those things in ball screen offense and low post offense alike with those guys. But you also have a couple of backup fours who can shoot threes, who you can also do some different things with offensively. So I think the second team offensive potency doesn't drop off nearly as much as it did last year. It might even, in some ways, be better this year. I shouldn't have said that out loud, but there are some ways where you can present different looks, different challenges to opponents with your backups than you can your starters. Saying it's better is absurd, but I think it could be different in a good way. We'll put it that way. So the rebounding's got to show up, the effort's got to show up. Purdue's got to make sure it takes nothing for granted. It is an annual right of December for Purdue to lose every Big Ten opener on the road. I think that's been in part just the quick turn from non-conference play to Big Ten play. It's been more often than not your first road game. Those environments have been pretty charged up. It's been a situation again where Purdue is that elite team that kind of gets the pig at the luau treatment. And that's been something that has caught up with them a couple times, a lot actually. And I think that Purdue's got to be ready for that every game. And I think that trip to Rutgers on December 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whatever it is going to be a really big tell of kind of where Purdue is from a mental perspective. I don't anticipate any problems there. It should be really clean. It should be really professional. But they still have to go out and prove all this stuff. So Purdue's gonna have a great year. I don't see any way around it. It's I mean, I don't want to sit here and say they're absolutely going to win the Big Ten because I have no idea what Michigan's going to look like. I have no idea what Michigan State's going to look like. I have no idea what Illinois is going to look like. I have no idea what language Illinois is going to be speaking. It's just such a weird world in college basketball nowadays that preseason forecasts are so fraught with peril. Yes, fraught with peril. I actually use that term off the top of my head. But Purdue is the most known commodity. They have the most continuity. And if you can say known commodity and most continuity as cleanly as I just did on 5 hours of sleep, I dare you to try it. Purdue's going to have a great year. I'd be really surprised if they didn't win the Big Ten. I think you'd call it a failure if they didn't. I think, this is a team that on paper has all things are possible, shall we say. This is kind of the same approach I probably would have communicated to you 2 years ago when Achilles was back for his senior year. The difference, I don't want to say the difference because that would sound predictive of this being a problem. That team 2 years ago was mad as hell because of the Fairleigh Dickinson game. It was embarrassed, but more than anything, it was pissed off. And that drove that intangible professionalism, consistency, and Terminator-like approach to every game through the course of the year. This team, its key players have been to a Final Four. They have won tons of individual awards. And they're going to be number one in a bunch of polls. They're going to be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in every poll. They're going to be told all year how good they are. It's just kind of the nature of sports and young people that you just got to handle that well. And that's the key to Purdue's success all year long is that staying in the moment, that making the next game the most important game every game. I can't believe how many bad cliches I've spent my whole career listening to that I'm now parroting to you. But that is the reality. The thing about cliches is they become cliches because people say them all the time. You hear them too much. But people say them all the time because they're true. And that is the reality of Purdue's situation here, is that the professionalism of this group really tells the tale of what they can do. And beyond that part of it, they can do whatever they want because they are loaded. They are clearly one of the elite teams in college basketball. They are probably the best Purdue team I've seen in way too many years doing this. And I think it should be a very interesting season, maybe a very long season. So that's what I got for our GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast this week. I do want to mention one other thing. We are lousy self-promoters. Lousy. I think we're good at our jobs. I think we do a good job as a company. I think we suck at selling. It's never been my thing. I just want to do my job and, not really pat myself on the back. I think we live in a world where clout wins. And I do just want to mention that if you're not yet a member of GoldandBlack.com, I urge you, if you're interested in this very subject matter here over the course of the next 8-9 months, however long this is going to go, you join our site because we put a lot of stuff out there for free, podcasts, these videos, social media stuff, but you're getting half the story that way. There are a ton of voices now, a lot of people who just pop up and posit themselves as experts. To get into the vanity part of this on my part, I've been doing this since 1995, maybe 365 days a year. This has been my deal. That first practice on Wednesday, that was probably my 10th since the end of last season. So if you want to know something, I am the one who is best suited to tell you what that is. I hate saying stuff like that. It is so against my nature. It is so against our nature as a company. We've always kind of let our work speak for itself and bank on people finding us because this is their affinity. But as I said before, I do think we do a pretty lousy job promoting ourselves, selling to people, and we probably need to change that. If you are interested in this Purdue basketball season, and a lot of people will be, what you're going to get on social media is going to be a lot of nonsense. A lot of ill-informed voices have kind of cropped up in that space, and I don't have anything against them personally. I just want you to know that we put a lot of time and effort into knowing our subject matter and communicating that to you as best we possibly can. I think every major storyline that has come up here in the last week or two about Purdue basketball appeared on our site back in like April. So again, I hate self-promoting, things like that. But I do think we need to do a better job just informing people of what we have available at GoldandBlack.com. So by all means, please check that out. Please consider subscribing, joining our message board, taking part in our chats on Wednesday, reading my columns, reading mine and Mike Carmen's coverage from games, before games, between games, all of it. So that's what I kind of got here. This has been your GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast. Thank you once again to our friends at the Purdue Club Hotel for their support. If you are watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you'd be so kind, if you're listening to this in podcast form, 5-star reviews are critical for us. So please, if you'd be so kind, leave us a 5-star review. We would appreciate that very much. And we will be talking to you again next week sometime after Purdue plays Illinois in football. So, and we will keep up on this channel too with some Purdue basketball stuff as well. So by all means, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube page as well by now, be kind, but violate that like button. I hate using the word smash, but hit the like button. So thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a great weekend.